So good morning to our friends joining us abroad. Good evening. Welcome to Mirage Talks. Today we welcome Chairman at Debt.com, Howard Dvorkin. Howard runs a family office that has 9 operating companies and 700 staff members and has invested in over 100 entrepreneurial ventures. Today's topic is managing debt and raising money in uncertain times. Howard, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate being here. And I like, normally I like a more interactive audience. So hopefully you'll give me some good questions towards the end, and we can start with some basic PowerPoints, which apparently I'm technically incompetent with that. So we'll try to make that as painless as possible. But thank you for allowing me to be here. Years ago, I told a story to Entrepreneur Magazine. I do some writing for them at Forbes, and I actually have a couple books out there. So I pretend to know what I'm talking about. And this story took over probably 2 decades ago. I was in a famous New Jersey bar called the Stone Pony. And if anybody is a big Bruce Springsteen fan, that is where Bruce Springsteen, rumor has it, started his career amongst many others. And I was at the Seaside Bar in Asbury Park, New Jersey. And I was hanging out with a very famous baseball player, whose name I won't say because of confidentiality purposes, because the story doesn't make him look so smart. The owner of the bar was there because this guy was a celebrity. And we were sitting there having some cocktails, and the owner was saying he's thinking about selling the bar. The baseball player was so impressed with this history of this bar, this establishment, and it really is an establishment, they turned to me and said, "I want to buy this place." Now, I knew that was a terrible idea, and frankly, pretty much I gathered that it was more the beer talking than any kind of common sense, but he was so excited. And now I've known a lot of pro athletes because of my business, and my main business is helping people get out of debt. So usually they're not here in the greatest times, but these guys think that they're invincible, that they could tackle anything, literally. And some of them can, but usually if they're talking to me, they're not so invincible and they're getting beat up pretty good. So I didn't say anything when this fella told me his great idea. And the worst thing you could ever do to an aspiring entrepreneur is tell him his idea is terrible and it's not going to work, because as entrepreneurs ourselves, we want to have immense financial success. And frankly, most entrepreneurs are in love with showing people that they're right and everybody's wrong and proving everybody else wrong. So I kind of kept my mouth shut. I listened to him, and I didn't really say what I thought of his idea. Then going back, I said to him, "You haven't seen the financial statements on the place. You have no experience running a bar." He doesn't know how good the permanent staff is that would remain. He had no plans on how to grow the revenue and so on and so forth. Instead, I just suggested that he run the idea against his agent, who was a very smart guy and very knowledgeable. And I knew it was going to be a very short conversation with his agent, and I was right. It was probably less than a 30-second conversation after talking about it with me for probably 3 or 4 hours. And I knew it was a crazy idea. The agent thought it was a great, crazy idea. And after the alcohol wore off, I guess the baseball player thought that too. Unfortunately, most entrepreneurs don't have agents and don't have CPAs like me that have seen success and failures and learn from both. They make avoidable mistakes, and those are the kind of mistakes you really don't want to make, because they're the worst ones, because you get to feel like an idiot. And by the way, all of us have felt like idiots over time. And I've been an entrepreneur for the last 30 years. I've seen a lot of good, a lot of bad, mostly good. In fact, my first probably 15 years, I had an incredible record. Everything I touched turned to gold. So that further boosted my my ego, and frankly, I thought I was invincible as well. Now, why listen to me? It's very simple. I've been around. I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years. I've seen a lot of good. I've seen a lot of bad. And I've made those mistakes 33 times over. The same mistake. It takes, I'm not as sharp as everybody, but sometimes it takes you a little bit to learn your mistakes. And I normally come out in pretty good shape because I'm a stubborn son of a gun. But you make a lot of mistakes. Like every entrepreneur of any age, of a certain age, and I'm not going to tell you how old I am. I won't do that because I've been around, but you could probably guess. I try to mentor a lot of younger entrepreneurs. I've seen significant success in several areas, including commercial real estate, in fintech, in publishing, and aeronautics, believe it or not. But by far, my most successful ventures have been in the debt relief space and trying to help people with their personal finances. I've written several books that actually sold a heck of a lot of copies. I think it was more good timing than anything. But several books about getting out of debt. I've launched debt solution businesses in the United States, in Canada, and the United Kingdom. And I'm chairman of debt.com, the first all-encompassing debt solutions company. Additionally, I'm chairman of a small publicly traded NASDAQ listed company. So I've had a pretty good run, which has been exciting. Before I began my career as an entrepreneur, I worked for some of the most respected international accounting firms in the world. I was actually a national tax department in Washington, D.C. for one of them. And I got to learn from the best of the best. When I struck out on my own, I didn't choose the sexiest financial fields. I wasn't helping people invest. I wasn't helping rich people get richer. I was getting regular people out of crushing debt, which is so unsexy. And in fact, the banker that I went to get my first loan, which was all about of $7,000 to start this new venture, which I didn't even need, but I was always taught I needed money. And I paid it back within 3 months because I hated being in debt and owing him. He tried to talk me out of doing this because he knew me as a pretty successful public accountant. And a couple of years later, 10 years later, I actually hired him and to work for us to do some jobs. So it was kind of interesting how full circle life goes. Basically, I believe that I've worked with lots of entrepreneurs, and I truly believe that giving back is something that was required. It's not an option. I've learned a lot of lessons being in the debt space, and frankly, ones that I use myself, and I tell young entrepreneurs this kind of information. Let's review some of those lessons that I've learned. Let your failure define you and educate you. What does that mean? I'm lucky enough to have been successful enough that entrepreneurs come to me and mentor for mentoring and, of course, funding. You know what I like to hear? How they failed. I don't want to hear how they won. I want to know how they failed. And I don't want them to sugarcoat their failures. I need to know that these guys can get back up on their feet once they fail. Last week, I reviewed a proposal by a friend of mine. He runs a public or a private equity company. And he asked me to look at this proposal, and it was by a guy who failed 4 times. Now that's 4 times is a lot of failure. And he's still trying. From tenacity's sake, I give the guy an A+. The idea wasn't a great idea, and I thought it had some weaknesses, so I didn't give it the thumbs up. But frankly, I like people who fail because they taste the failure and they could still get up. What I always tell people when you're looking for money, don't try to fool potential investors. Trust me, I've heard every story possible. And now with the internet, you can't lie. You can't lie. And you really can't hide anymore. It'll come out. And once you do a deep dive, it's gonna be shaken out. I will tell you, a couple weeks ago, I had a call from somebody of a deal that I went into, and it went really, really bad. And there was some fraud involved. And the person called me who was thinking of giving this fella some money, and the deal happened 15 years ago. And he said, I found your name, and what happened? And obviously I was under confidentiality clauses from the settlement, and I couldn't say anything, but people do go back and look at your history. So don't lie, be upfront and tell them exactly what happened. I want to know when I'm looking at a company, and I've done a lot of investing in my days. I want to know about the past failures. Give me the gory details. I'll find them out anyway. So you need to be forthright. Tell me all the highly advanced lessons that you learned over those failures. And most important, you got to be honest and truthful. Sell me on how you're never going to make those mistakes again. And if everything else looks good, I just might invest with you. The trick is when you get knocked down, you got to jump right back up and keep swinging. That's the most important thing. I had a guy come to me a couple, I guess last year, and he was looking in the States. We have a budding marijuana business going on, and I've never invested in that, and I probably never will. But the guy told me that he had all these plans. I said, show me, but he had no real business plan, and he really didn't know a lot about the industry, other than he wanted to be in the industry because I'm guessing he was a good customer of somebody and thought he could make money at it. But the kid was a nice fella. Tried to give him some advice, but obviously I couldn't invest, just the nature of the business. But in his case, he was right out of school and has never failed, and so right off the bat, I want somebody who knows how to handle adversity and wants some experience. Let's keep talking about failure. And instead of talking about falling back, fail forward. That's really an important thing. I once wrote a column for a magazine, which I think is up here. And it was basically the number one lesson was you need to fail fail forward rather than fail backwards. Don't let a failure cause you to retreat. Make sure you learn something from that failure. It either cost you a lot of time, a lot of money, or your investors or your family, friends and family money. So be cognizant. If you're going to spend the time, make every lesson worthwhile. And that's the real thing, what we need. What do I mean by failing forward? It means talking about your failures as openly as you talk about your successes. Why? Because it's okay to talk about your failures, because if you're hopefully learned from those lessons, those failures, you won't make the same mistake again, unless of course you're like me, who would do that. And it takes me a couple times I'm not that quick of a learner. So it takes me a couple times to learn failure. I want to invest in people that are tough as nails. That's the one thing. If you are not tough mentally, I'm not talking physically. If you're not tough mentally, and you know how to recover from failures, it's very difficult for me or anybody to invest back in you. Why? Because you need to be able to weather the storm, because when you're starting a business, especially a new venture, there's always storms and there's always hurricanes, and you need to get back on your feet again. Investors know you have a steel spine, and it also permeates into the entire company. This is when hard work takes place. And I'm going to tell you that there is no substitute for hard work. I've hired some very smart people with great backgrounds and great experience, but they couldn't run a business. There's always going to be smarter people than you, always. The only differential in this life is that you can outwork everybody. And in my case, I pretty much have. That's a little picture of my debt.com team at, I think last summer, or maybe the summer before. We had a little picnic and we have a good time down here. It's not always a day at the beach, but frankly, we have some talented people, a pretty good mixture of people, which is nice. And they're all young, but at the end of the day, they need to be mentored. I'm now chairman of debt.com, and I wanted to do something that's never been done before in the debt relief space. And I wanted to create a one-stop shop to get people out of debt. And that has been a lifelong goal, because people don't get into debt for one reason or another. They get into debt for all sorts of reasons, whether it's credit cards, student loans, tax debts, bankruptcy, whatever the case may be. You make one call to a trained expert, and they're matched up with the solution that's best going to help them. That doesn't come easy. Needless to say, to do something like that hasn't been done in the past, you're gonna run into problems. And it took a couple of years for us to get onto firm footing. And frankly, we're there now, but it definitely took some time. We were in one area and we were very good. In fact, my first entrepreneurial commercial adventure was a company, and we became the largest credit counseling agency in the world, and operated in, I don't know, five different companies or countries on 3 continents. But the fact of the matter is that took some time. This one was very, very entrepreneurial, and because it was starting something that's new. When I hire somebody, the resumes don't matter as much as pure heart does. Resumes matter, but if they don't have heart, if they don't care about the business as much as you'll never be successful. They'll never be successful. They got to have heart. I have started people at receptionist positions and watched them grow in this company, in our various companies, to management, and it's been a reward for me because they all have heart, and that's important. That's very important. You might, when you start a business, you might want to hire a bunch of people with great resumes. That doesn't always work out. I have been lucky. I hire people that all of my senior people are smarter than me in their own ways. Not sure they all have the same street sense I have. At least that's what I tell myself. But I will tell you that they do have a lot of heart. They're very smart people. They're hardworking. But if the people don't have the same goals as you, they're not going to be successful. When you go through and you need to hire people that can handle emergencies, and as I said before, emergencies always happen. It's a startup. Nothing happens smooth. Investors especially want to know how nimble your team is and how nimble you are, and can they handle whatever is thrown at them before they throw money at your concept. Now, this is interesting because I'm throwing a little personal stuff in here. And if I can find my, whoops, there, a horse. Now, I'm showing you a horse for a couple of reasons. Number one, I'm in the horse business, not the racing horse business. I'm in the jumper business, and actually very much entrenched in that business. But this is a racehorse. And why do I show this? Because you don't want to invest in the horse. You want to invest in the jockey that's riding the horse, because that man in the red shirt can go on to any horse and ride it just as good, almost as good as his best horse. The fact of the matter is, you need a good jockey. The horse is great, but the jockey is what counts. And that's something that must be taken serious. Let's talk about spending money. The one thing that I don't like is having folks come to me and being something they're not. When I started in the debt industry, my first office was a converted janitor's closet with a old desk, an old phone, and a chair that was pretty much broken. My first major acquisition was a used filing cabinet for $50. The fact of the matter is, I still remember those days. I still appreciate those days. And, I wasn't in fancy offices. People that tend to get into debt that I see, get into debt for illness, accidents, but there's also self-delusion. They feel that they need to be better and live a lifestyle that they can't even afford. I could tell you from my many clients that are buried in debt, they all were spending money to make money. Some of them, not all of them. Or projecting an image that they couldn't portray themselves to be something that they weren't. They were posing, hoping to get the funding. I could tell you a story about a fellow. He called me up. He was a friend of a friend, and he flew out from the other side of the country, Arizona, came to my office, had a fancy shirt on with I think it was with his company logo, with a Nike emblem on it, which, nice shirt, probably cost him $50. And he comes into my office, throws a pair of set of keys down. It was to a Mercedes. And I asked him, I said, why are you driving a Mercedes? He goes, oh, I rented it. I was treating myself. He was coming to me to raise money. And this is how my funds are going to be spent, renting him a Mercedes Benz. That meeting was over really, really quick, really quick. You got to be careful. People often say, well, I'm not spending money on myself. I'm spending it on the business. So I'm doing what these people did. And, you got to ask yourself, are you really spending money on the business? Was that gentleman that flew in from Arizona to Florida, was he really spending money on the business, or was he really spending money on himself? That's not where I want my money to go. I've seen too many entrepreneurs waste a ton of money on fancy offices, fancy desks, fancy computers, and drive fancy cars. Do you really need that to be successful in today's environment? I don't think so. I walked into I see a lot of distressed companies in my career. One was a company it was an advertising agency, a well-known advertising agency. And I walked in and they had all these brand new TVs set up. And this is before big screens, big TVs became relatively inexpensive. And, at the time they were probably $5,000, $6,000 a piece. And there was 10 of them. It was a whole wall of TVs. It was crazy. And, you're talking $50,000. It turns out you could figure out the company was going out of business. And certainly after I walked out of there, it did. A week later, they filed for bankruptcy and they went out of business. When I saw that, the meeting was quickly over. They couldn't even afford payroll, which was kind of a bummer. Here's me, or somewhat looking like me. I guess I never had a beard or a goatee, but that was basically my first office, which was fun, being stuck in there. What I would say is you don't need to spend money on trappings until you're actually successful. And the problem with faking it till you make it is that fakers go broke, and they go broke fast. So be careful. There's one exception to the rule. And this is a pretty good exception. This is a fancy office. By the way, I want it for the record, this is not my office. Actually, it'll never be my office. I couldn't afford all that nice stuff, or want to afford it. I could afford it, let me say, but I would never afford it. When you're trying to sell a business, you want to look successful. And now this is something really I personally don't care about when I buy a business, but some people do. I've often spoke to institutional investors over the years, and they want to buy a business with shiny offices that look great. To me, I think it's not the smartest use of capital, especially if they're not making money. I compare it to a homeowner. When you go buy a house and maybe it's a fixer-upper and you have to install floors and you have to paint the walls, some people just want it all ready to go. But I'm a fixer-upper kind of guy. So, that's not my style. What this means, don't invest in the trappings of success until you have to. Even today, our offices are not looking like the one on the screen. And they hopefully never will. And the reason being is, that's probably $60,000, $70,000 worth of glass, not even talking about the furniture. But the fact of the matter is, why waste the money? What I guess I would say is, when you approach an investor, don't try to sweet talk them. Just speak with them like you would anybody else. Give them the facts. An experienced investor can cut through the garbage and know you're bullshitting them. Excuse my language. I could tell you how many slick pitches I get every month. I see 5 deals a week. In fact, in the next room, I have a group that flew in from the Midwest to pitch us on their fabulous company. And the fact of the matter is, it just doesn't seem so fabulous right now. Maybe I'm wrong, but we'll dig down a little further. I will tell you, I actually get a little angry because I want analysis and I don't want hype. And I don't want to hear certainly how wonderful I am and how great I am, because I already know how great I am. Just ask me, I'll tell you. But in all honesty, I don't want to be fluffed. I just want the facts. The one thing that that bothers me, I'm a trained CPA, and I also have an MBA from a pretty good school. And I was always taught to do a business plan. People are getting away from that and showing spreadsheets of potential. I don't believe in the spreadsheets. I want to see a true business plan. And actually, this one company that did this, I made them go back and actually write a business plan of how they're going to conquer the world. I did it with my companies, and we have done exceptionally well over the last 30 years, and we're keep doing well, but I always want a business plan. And it's not for the sake of wasting time. I want a business plan so you think through what you're doing. I don't want words on a paper. I certainly want a plan that tells me what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and show me the true potential of the investment. Now, I will tell you that we have invested in a tremendous amount of deals over the course of the last certainly 20 years. I have had some great successes. I've had some missteps. The best investment that I can tell you is invest in yourself, simply because if you're not willing to invest in yourself, why should anybody else? So take the time, and the less partners you have, the better off too. You can't do it alone, but don't be so eager to give pieces of your company away. Try to figure out how to structure deals where you're giving something that looks like equity, feels like equity, but you still maintain control of your company. Don't go through and give away the store, because you never know when you're going to need extra pieces. And I've seen entrepreneurs start out with 100% of the company and end up with quite a bit less by the time they're done, which is sad, truthfully. You spend your whole career and you find yourself working for others. So anyway, that is what I have to talk. I think I want to hear some questions, and hopefully you'll allow me to answer some. I would appreciate that.
You can also send your messages on the message board if you would like. Oh, come on. I know we're not shy here.
Listen, I will tell you that I have seen a tremendous amount of growth. I'm actually involved in a fintech uh, venture capital firm that focuses a lot in Israel, that has had extremely great success. I will tell you that for me, I think there's a lot of great things coming out of Israel. The tech is by far the most exciting thing, and there's tremendous people, tremendous brain power, frankly, out of that area. And it's interesting that it's just coming out of the ground, and I guess it's been there for a long time, but certainly it's finding its way over to the States with some great success. And I want to applaud those people that are involved in that. And, I've gone to the conferences over the years with the Finovate. I will tell you, a lot of that, there's some good connections, but just focus on your business, and certainly focus on your on getting your business right. And what concerns me a lot of the time is entrepreneurs run around to try to raise money, and that's their full-time job. And I often ask, if you're running around trying to raise money, who's running the company? So get enough money, but certainly you got to run a business, or eventually you're not going to be able to raise any money. So be careful with that.
Okay, it looks like we've got some questions on the message board, Howard. So one, it says, seems like it's a fine line between spinning your potential investors and wowing them. Can you give us an example of a pitch that wowed you? What did they say exactly? What got you to invest, and how did they say it?
I don't get wowed by anything. A lot of my investments are in real estate, but I also do, I've been doing some businesses, some fintech businesses. Usually it's the folks that are behind there that maybe have previously invested in businesses, in that business. Maybe it's your track record wows me. You're talking about somebody who frankly has probably invested in well over 100, probably closer to 200 deals in the last 20 plus years. I think it's, again, and if I show the horse again, you invest in the jockey. It has to be the jockey. Can't be the idea. The idea is great, but you could have the greatest idea, but if you don't have the ability to pull it off, and I don't think you're mentally tough enough or smart enough to pull it off, then I'm not going to invest in you. There's some companies that I wish I did invest in that I passed on. Not many, but I will tell you that investing in businesses is tougher than it looks, because there's a lot of things that can go wrong. You're on mute, Christy.
Sorry about that. Do you find professional athletes to be more likely to get in debt because the money comes easy, or lack of financial education?
Yes, I do. I have seen and counseled many professional athletes. In fact, I've had an entire or half a World Series team as my clients at one time early in my career. They seem to be all broke, but I do counsel a lot of athletes. They tend not to understand the problems they have, and they don't certainly understand that the money eventually runs out, and their career, they have a very limited lifespan as a professional athlete. It could be 2 years, it could be 4 years, maybe sometimes it's 10 years, but you have a lot of expenses, and you have to be careful not to throw away all your money. or else you're going to end up in trouble. In fact, I've had a lot of Hollywood movie stars, same thing. I even had an ex-wife of one of the richest men in the world at the time, and she spent every dime he gave her. And I will tell you, it was a pretty sad story. But when I see people in debt, it's from thinking that the money train will not end. They're used to a certain lifestyle, and you got to be careful of people. And this is a good lesson for entrepreneurs, that you should make sure that your friends are your friends and not your friends because they want something from you. And it's happened to me, and you kind of close that circle of friends because you really don't know what people want from you. Once you become a certain level of success, you have lots of people that want to hang out with you. And sometimes that's good, and a lot of times that's probably not good.
We have another question. How did you decide to sell a profitable company? What was the thought process? What was a red flag and put you off from investing in a person or a company?
What was the last part? I'm sorry.
What was the red flag and put you off from investing in a person or a company?
Got it. Let's talk about, we sold a fintech company a couple of years ago, probably 3 years ago. It was highly profitable. We started it from the ground up. We actually built software for one of our other companies, and we realized that the competing software was so bad that we ended up building the software, and then we commercialized it and sold it. And we were making a tremendous amount of money every year. Over time, that software became dated. There was more competition, and I brought in a professional group to manage the software company because, as maybe you know, I'm not the most technically sophisticated person around, and the management team didn't get along, and that was a problem. I thought that they could get along and they would meld together, and it was infighting. And at the time, the company was still very profitable, but the software needed to be redone. And because of the infighting, I did not believe for a second that we could rebuild the entire software platform in a reasonable period of time. And it would have cost a couple $1 million. And we ended up saying, that's it, we're out. We sold it. It was a great process. We sold it at the right time. We made a tremendous amount of money from the business, and then sold it for 6 or 7 cap, which was low at the time for a fintech company. But it was the right move because the market changed significantly. At the end of the day, sometimes you do things because you just don't want to be aggravated. And I think that the company is absolutely still in business, in functioning. We're actually one of their clients, but they've had some struggles. So it was absolutely the right time to sell.
We have a really great question from Yali. In terms of student debt, do you believe in a long-term approach to paying off the debt, or quickly paying it off as quickly as possible after graduation?
That's a great question. Student debt is something that's around. It's going to stay around. The interest rates are low. I think it's really a financial decision. You've invested in yourself by taking on that student debt. And, my philosophy has always been pay off the debt as soon as possible, as much as you can, but you got to evaluate it. Student debt, can be a noose around your neck. In the United States, they're talking about giving free education out or paying off people's debts. And I think that's a horrible idea personally, because I think a lot of people have struggled to pay their student debt over years. And I think it would be a bad move to pay off the people's debt or have tax dollars pay off other people's debt, student debt. But getting back to the question, I do believe that people should evaluate whatever the debt they're in. If they have excess dollars, put it towards your debt. It's probably going to be the best money you'll ever spend. But again, it's on a case-by-case basis.
Then we have another question from Michael. What's your take on the work from home movement? Can companies be successful with a work from home model? Can it save entrepreneurs money, or will it cost them more in the end?
You know, I think, you know, because of the COVID has perpetuated the work at home movement tremendously. The one thing I have noticed is that not a lot of creativity can get done in your bedroom. When you get the groups together and they talk freely in a conference room, a lot of good stuff happens. I cannot possibly put together a media campaign or give my input on certain things. Certain things in business you need to be in the same room. And certainly, you know, with a brand new company or a startup company, you need those people in the same room. You can't have them deployed across the country. You need those people in the same room to bounce ideas off of, to work hard. You know, and frankly, there's a lot the chemistry and building a corporate culture is important. My secret sauce to building a company has been our corporate culture for years. And I can't build a corporate culture with 15 people sitting on a Zoom call. Just isn't going to happen. So you're losing a lot. And, you know, yeah, it's going to cost you a couple bucks to pay the rent. Maybe you need some furniture, electric bill, but in the long run, it's not a significant amount of money. And I will tell you, I will not invest in a company that does not have an office. That does not have an office. Everybody is deployed. That's crazy. They could just turn around and say, yeah, we don't want, thanks for your money, but we don't want to do this anymore. And that's not what I signed up for.
Excellent. Well, we have time for about one more question before we close. Do we have any other questions? Well, all right then. Howard, on behalf of Paul Mirage, thank you so much for joining us today. Ellie, thank you so much for putting this wonderful presentation together with Howard. This is excellent. And thank you for enlightening our tribe.
Thank you so much for having me. And if anybody would like to reach out to me at some time and tell me their stories and tell me what their business is, I'm happy to give you my 2 cents on it and maybe even invest down the road. But thank you for allowing me to talk to your group.
Thank you everyone for joining. Take care.
Thank you so much, Christy. Okay, you're on mute.
Thank you, Howard.
Thank you. Bye-bye.